Hey, what's up everyone? It's Duncan from overlandjournals.com. With my beginner series almost at an end, in this video I'm going to talk about some random practices I do when I'm off-road overlanding. So I'll see you just after the show reel. Welcome back. If you're new to my channel, please do consider subscribing. My channel is all about sharing my years of experience in off-road touring or off-road overlanding with the wider community. I don't claim to be an expert. I live and learn like the rest of us. So by sharing my knowledge and experiences with the rest of you, the idea is I hopefully will try and add some value to your touring and your overlanding. So do consider subscribing. So in case you missed the previous videos to my beginner series, I'll leave a link above and in the description below. Go make sure you go and check those out. I'm sure you'll find them interesting. There's a whole heap of topics I've talked on. So yeah, go check that playlist out. So to today's video. Today's video is all about some random practices I do when I'm off-road overlanding. These are not uniquely mine. There's many others out there who do practice it, but I feel that it's worth mentioning, especially for the benefit of those who are just getting into this lifestyle. So here we go. So the first one is the use of sand flags. Now, sand flags are useful when you are, particularly when you're traversing over sand dunes. And that's because as you go up a sand dune, your vehicle for oncoming traffic from the opposite end is almost non-existent. There's no visibility at all. And it can be quite dangerous at times if you got, if there happens to be two vehicles climbing the same sand dune at the same time and nobody sees each other. It can be a really dangerous situation when you meet each other at the top of the dune. So that's where a sand flag comes in. Now, in some states, as far as I know here in Australia, sand flags are a requirement or a must, in some not. I, as a personal practice, I use the sand flags all the time, whether it's law or not. Because it's all about safety of myself, my occupants in my vehicle, and then others. So you don't want a problem. So I always install the sand flag. Now, the requirement is if you're mounting the sand flag on your bull bar or somewhere in the front, then the requirement is 3.5 meters height. That's to the top of the flag, 3.5 meters from the ground. However, I personally mount it on the roof rack, because higher the flag is, the better it is. So the requirement there is 2 meters from the mounting point. I go a bit higher than that. As I said, the idea is to try and get that visibility across to oncoming traffic. So I go higher than 2 meters, but 2 meters is the minimum requirement. And there's something else I do. So the general practice most overlanders do is if this is your roof rack or bull bar, wherever you're mounting it, they mount it straight up. I personally I do something a bit better than that. I feel that it's better. And that's because if you got it straight up, as your vehicle's going up the sand dune, your sand flag is more tilted backwards. So the visibility reduces further, if that makes sense. So what I do is when I mount my sand flag on the bull bar or the roof rack, in my case I put it on the roof rack, I tilt it forward, approximately about 20-25 degrees forward. So the idea is when the vehicle is going up the sand dune, instead of the sand flag being tilted backwards, it's actually upright. I hope that makes sense. So to recap again, instead of having the sand flag straight up, I have it tilted forward. So when the vehicle's going up the sand dune, the sand flag is actually upright. That way I feel that I get more maximum visibility out there to other travelers. So always think of a sand flag, carry it in your vehicle when you're doing your trip planning. You know whether you're going to traverse sand dunes or not. Once you know that, make sure you carry one of these. So the next is the use of a UHF radio. Now I talked about this in one of my previous videos to the beginner series where I talked about communication. So check that out as well, link below and above. Now here in Australia, when you travel in remote country, usually channel 10 is the common channel that everybody uses to communicate with each other. So, it's usually indicated. Now, for example, if you're crossing the Simpson Desert, and there will be signposts telling you that channel 10 is the common channel, but generally that's the practice, channel 10. So make sure you tune into channel 10 and share information with other travelers. Just get on the radio now and then and just give information out there. Don't block the airwaves just talking nonsense, but give useful information to other travelers. And particularly if you are climbing sand dunes and you know where visibility bed can be quite poor for oncoming traffic, just make sure you get on that radio and get that information out there. If you're in convoy, you want to have a chat with everybody else in the convoy, and that's the fun part of the traveling. But then you don't want to use channel 10, because channel 10 is just for those, for getting information out there for everybody else. So what I recommend is having two radios. So have one radio on channel 10 and the second radio onto a private channel. Now that may not be easy if not everyone may have two radios. So what I do as a practice, if I'm the lead vehicle in the convoy, I have two radios. So I have an onboard dash mounted radio UHF, and I also have a couple of handhelds. So what I do is, as the lead vehicle, I have my onboard UHF tuned to channel 10, and then I have my handheld radio turned to a private channel. And then I get everybody else in the convoy with their radios to tune into that private channel. So as the lead vehicle, I can still get information out there to other travelers on channel 10. At the same time, if I want to have a private conversation with the rest of the guys or rest of the girls in the convoy, I've got my handheld. So that's a practice that I do, so I don't disturb and overuse the channel 10. Still with convoy travel, if I'm the lead vehicle, what I do is I get every vehicle to keep a visual on the vehicle behind, because you don't want to lose anyone when you're out there. And when you're in really remote country, if you lose someone, then it can lead to quite disastrous situations. You don't want to do that. So the sort of the rule that I follow, and that's many other overlanders follow as well, is each vehicle keeps an eye on the vehicle behind. So keep a visual. Now, of course, visual is not always possible because of all the dust that kicks up. We tend to fall a good distance behind, so to avoid the dust. And it's also safe to avoid the dust, because then you don't see what's in front of you when you're in the thick of dust. So which is fine. So then what a couple of practices I do is, one, I make sure each vehicle radios and keeps radio contact with the vehicle behind. And as the lead vehicle, I would always keep contact with the last vehicle on the convoy, or what we call the sweep vehicle or the tail vehicle. So I always keep in contact with that vehicle. But at the same time, everybody is now and then told to keep radio contact with the vehicle immediately behind them. So that way we all know everybody's, together. Now, what happens is, if one vehicle falls out of range and you can't get them on radio, what that means is they're too far behind, and then immediately slow down. Tell everybody else in the convoy that you are slowing down because you have lost radio contact with the person behind you. And then if you have to come to a halt, come to a halt. Now, by keeping that information going, you basically bring the whole convoy to a halt, which is a good thing. And then from that point onwards, then you can figure out whether you're going to go back and look for the person that's not in contact, or you're going to sit and wait for a while. So keeping that communication throughout the entire convoy, apart from having the banter and the chit chat, it's also a good way to make sure that everybody stays together however far you're going. And particularly here in Australia, where convoy travel in the deep outback can be hundreds of kilometers, making sure everybody stays together is extremely important. So try and put those to practice when you're in convoy. Now, staying on convoy travel, a lot of the tracks that we do out there are usually single lane traffic. So there's always two directions of traffic flow, but the lanes or the tracks are so narrow, they're only enough for one lane of traffic. So always be aware of that. Always keep the communications, like I said earlier, so that you keep informing oncoming traffic. And the unwritten rule is, if you come across oncoming traffic, the longer convoy or the bigger convoy gets the right of way. So if you are not the longer convoy, step aside, let the longer convoy get through. However, The exception to the rule is if someone's going uphill or up a dune, whether they're the bigger convoy or not doesn't matter. They have the right of way. It's common sense. It's a bit of a challenge going uphill than coming down. So step aside, let the longer convoy pass through. Now, also on the radio, just keep telling everyone just that the information out there, how many in your convoy, so that they know how many vehicles they should avoid or should pass before they get back on track. However, if you're not on radio contact for some reason or the other, then what I do, if I'm the lead vehicle, I always use hand signals. So if, for example, if there's 5 vehicles in my convoy, I will always give a 5. And then I also get the other convoy members to do the same. So the vehicle that's behind me, the 4th vehicle, as he passes the other convoy which is in the opposite direction, he'll do a 4, the next one will do a 3, and so on until the last one has passed. So it's another way of communicating if you haven't got radio contact. It's courtesy, and it's also, you know, sharing what's out there with everybody else, so, you know, keeping it safe. Next practice, maps. Now, we all have GPSs. We all carry GPSs. I carry 2 sometimes. Overkill, but I do. But nothing beats a printed map, because printed maps don't malfunction. They don't run out of batteries. They don't run out of GPS signal at times. So always make sure you carry a printed map, because they are so invaluable. Even though we live in a digital age, this is very valuable. So carry a map with you. That's what I do. I carry heaps of maps. So when I do my trip planning, I know exactly where I'm going. And if there's nearby areas which I might just sort of venture into, I make sure I carry maps for all those areas. So I also got a reference between the digital map on my GPS and the printed map as well. So that way I'm able to, you know, plan my trip better. And if the GPS for some reason doesn't function or runs out of batteries or whatever, I got this to fall back on. Next, a toolbox. Toolbox is essential. You may not be very knowledgeable in mechanical repairs or anything of that sort. I certainly am not either. And in one of my previous videos, I talked about where I sometimes get the person who maintains my vehicle to sometimes, you know, let me help him do certain repairs on the car with him, so I get a little bit of knowledge. So that's something you could do if you like. But however, whatever your approach may be, carry a toolbox. This is obviously stating the obvious. Apart from carrying the basic tools, carry also certain basic spares. Now what I do is I got these little containers that I buy from the local hardware store. It's small, easy, lightweight, and I can sort of put them into the compartments. So for instance, I carry all the fuses that I need for my vehicle. So I've figured out what the fuses are, what ratings fuses it uses, and in this container I've got all my fuses which I need, and that stays permanently in the 4B. And then I also carry this. I've got heaps of these. I just brought 2 to show on the video. Then on this one I carry various other spares, like a couple of screws, and a couple of bulbs and so on, which I need. And then I got heaps of others which I have, like spare wheel studs. And also what I've done with my vehicle is I've identified the commonly or most usually threads or bolts and nuts and so on, and I carry a bit of spare ones as well. So think about doing that, because you never know when you might need it. And that's when, if you don't have it, that's when you wish you had them with you. So take them with you. Now another thing is cable ties. I think it's the best invention ever, because these things can do a whole lot of work. If you want to just, you know, patch up something or tie something together, cable ties of different lengths, different strengths, essential, carry them with you. However, there are certain repairs which cable ties cannot do. And for that, the most useful is some wire. I carry wire all the time. Some years back during a trip, I had a problem with my exhaust clamp, one of my exhaust clamps coming off from the tail end of the vehicle. And you can't use cable ties for that, because cable ties can just melt. And thankfully I had wire with me, so I was able to tie it up with the wire and then do the rest of the trip. So carry some wire with you. So carry basic stuff with you which you feel you'd be useful if you needed it. Hopefully you don't. Something else that could happen when you're traveling, especially traveling over corrugations, rough tracks, is your wheel studs sometimes, not always, very rarely in fact, can come loose. Now you can't be stopping all the time to check and get a wheel spanner out and then check if the studs are tight enough. You really don't want to bother with that. I used to many years ago, but that was such a pain. So I found another way to do it. So what I do is, before I set off on a trip, before I set off home, I get my wheel span out, make sure all the wheel studs are tight, and then what I do is I take a bit of correction fluid. You know, when you make a mistake when you're writing something or you've typed something, you want correction. So correction fluid, or sometimes they're known as whiteouts. I take one of those and I draw a line from the wheel stud to the rim. So it's one continuous line starting from the wheel stud to the rim, and I do this with all my wheel studs. So every time I stop the vehicle, all I got to do is make sure those lines, the whiteout lines, are still aligned. If they have moved, then I know that that wheel stud has, you know, slightly got looser, and I can quickly tighten that particular one. Another good practice is, if you are driving through gates, leave them as you found them. So if you found them open, leave them open. If you found them closed, then close them behind you. Especially here in Australia, we get to travel through a lot of private property, especially like massive cattle ranches, and they're good enough to let us travel through their properties. So we need to respect their way of doing things. So if you find the gates open, leave it open. There's a reason why they left it open in the first place. If it is closed, then make sure whoever is at the very end of your convoy, so the lead vehicle will open the gate, and then the tail vehicle or the sweep vehicle will close the gate. That's just the general practice. If you're on your own, open it and close it. As you're traveling, if you see other travelers on the side of the road, just stop. Common courtesy. Ask them if they're all right, if they need any help. They may have just stopped to take a break, to chill a bit. But that's okay, just ask them if they're all right. It's always the courteous thing to do. So those are the common sort of random basic practices that I wanted to share with you. There may be a lot more out there. So if you're a regular traveler, overlander, and you have more that you would like to add to that list, please leave them in the comments below. I love to learn as well. But try and put those into practice and improve on these as you go along. And if you think of anything else that you feel is that adds value not just to your travels but to those of the others, and caring for the environment and so on, just make them common practices. That way we become a responsible community, enjoying what we love doing, and then we also pass that on to our kids who will one day become doing the same thing that we love doing. So this brings me to the end of this video, as well as the entire beginner series. I hope you found the video as well as the beginner series useful. If you haven't watched the previous videos, please go check out the playlist. The link is below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. My idea with this channel is to share information with the wider community and also to learn from you. We live and learn. That's something I firmly believe in. So thank you for watching. If you want me to talk about anything else that's particularly beginner related, please do comment below, and I'm happy to do another video or two. And I'll see you in my next video next week. Thank you for watching.